You mean for a minimal investment, I can be a better person?
Yes.
Wow. Nobody's ever told me that.
Yeah,
Amazing.
for a very minimal investment, you could be a much better person. In fact, you could get this camera. I could send you a link on Amazon. It'll be in the description below. You can get that camera, and I'll get a commission off of it. And hey, we're live on the Brushfire Mind. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Holy shit! The Mueller probe is over. Now, let's not get too excited, I suppose. This has been a long time coming, a lot of anticipation, and let me tell you something. And I don't know if Mario, I don't know if you caught this yet or not. I know you read the letter,
Yes.
and so did I. We're going to start talking about the letter in just a minute. We're going to pull it up and go through it. Funny story. This letter is actually a bombshell. There is some right on the first page. There is something here that should end hundreds of careers.
I'm intrigued.
All right. So let's talk about Trayvon Martin for a second. May seem a bit off topic. A bit. But I want you to remember that what happened in the case of Trayvon Martin, and this was part of the national news, is that the DA at the time, on the recommendation of the police that arrived at the scene, said that the evidence was at least nearly enough conclusive of self-defense that it would not be reasonable for a prosecutor to move forward, that there was not a reasonable expectation that a prosecutor could secure a conviction on the charge of murder in the Trayvon Martin case. Zimmerman could not be found guilty of murder in the estimation of the prosecutor. So what happened to that DA? Anybody remember?
He was fired.
In fact, it was the state AG was fired and replaced with one who was willing, at Holder's behest,
Yeah.
to pursue the matter despite the clear facts that it was a case of self-defense. Right? And I don't mean to defend Zimmerman. Frankly, I think Zimmerman is an asshole. But the facts of the case show
But
clearly that he was
the
attacked.
meme, but the memes. Come on, Larry. The memes were priceless.
Huh, fair enough. But at the end of the day, what happened is a thug punched an asshole, and the asshole shot him. That's
Yeah.
fair. Here's why that matters. That's a recent, very high profile case where the case was not going to be pursued because the evidence was not sufficient for the prosecutor to reasonably expect the securing of a conviction. One does not pursue an investigation without evidence of a crime. One does not pursue indictment or prosecution without evidence sufficient to convict. Now, grand jury can indict a ham sandwich, is the old saying. Okay, sure.
So, like, let me break this up real quick. What you're getting at is that media malfeasance can essentially create the necessitation for judicial action, regardless of the circumstances of the case.
That is a fair point, and that is part of the point.
That's what happened with Zimmerman. I mean, that's especially what happened with the Michael Brown incident in Ferguson, Missouri. The media created a situation where the judicial action was necessitated.
No, that's not what happened there.
Don't go on a tangent. Don't go on a tangent.
No. This is important. This is important to the matter at hand. That's not quite what happened there, because in both of those cases that you mentioned, it became very clear that Eric Holder was the Attorney General of the United States, not some state attorney general, not some little district attorney, not some little fucking prosecutor. No, Obama's wingman was actively involved with the busing of protesters and activists into the areas to cause the stink, to create that media narrative, and then under his tutelage, especially this is especially significant in the Zimmerman case, because under his tutelage, that's how the state AG got replaced with one that was friendly to the national AG. It's the reason I make the distinction here is because the media was an instrument of a weaponized and dangerously partisan branch of the federal government under the control of a grotesquely corrupt President Barack Obama. This is also significant.
And I can say what I hope that we learn from basically the conclusion of the Mueller investigation, that can anyone with a clear mind say that the mainstream media is not in fact an advertising wing of the Democratic Party? Can anyone claim that they are objective reporters? Can anyone claim that they should be basically afforded the protections that Ben Franklin ensured existed in the Constitution for the press? Can anyone say that? I mean, how many people had to eat a giant sandwich today? How many people?
Not nearly enough.
Maddow cried.
Yeah.
And they all, and honestly, Fox News didn't even get on a celebratory bandwagon, because Fox News is basically, more or less, aside from several opinion authors.
I've been pretty far done with Fox News for a while now.
As well. What you should have seen today in the mainstream media was basically a all-you-can-eat Chinese buffet of cow patties, okay? Cow pies, laid out. Everyone's filling up 5 plates. Chow down. Mandatory. It's an embarrassment. And the thing is that, there's enough ambiguity in what Barr released so that, you know what? Let's talk about Nadler. Let's talk about Jerry Nadler.
Let's get to that in a minute. Okay. So
he doesn't get paid enough. He doesn't get paid enough. His performance today, he should be getting paid 3 times as much. I'm just saying.
Okay, I've clearly missed something. We'll have to get back to that. But let me bring all this. I've wasted 15 minutes talking about stuff that's not related to the Mueller report. Let me get to how this is related.
You talked about Trayvon, Larry. You talked about Trayvon. Don't blame me.
I know. But this is where it gets important. This is where it matters.
Right.
Let's not forget that all of this Russia probe stuff happened while Obama was still the president. That's where it all began. Okay? This all began with the Democrat Party having a Democrat president, setting the groundwork before the duly elected President Trump was inaugurated. The Democrats, with Hillary and Obama at the helm, created this farce. Now, it is important to note everything that I've been saying in this show up until now about the importance of evidence in prosecution and indictment and investigation. On the first page of Barr's letter, here we go. On Friday, the special counsel submitted to me a confidential report explaining the prosecution or declination decisions. This report, entitled Report on the Investigation into Russian Interference in the 2016 Presidential Election. It is important to note that there was never actually impaneled an investigation into Donald Trump colluding with Russia. And there's a few important key points to be made on that statement. For one, such an investigation would be a criminal investigation, whereas this investigation into the matter of Russian interference is what's called a counterintelligence investigation. Counterintelligence investigation has a significantly lower standard of evidence because it is not being conducted against American citizens. As soon as you are accusing an American citizen and initiating an investigation there, you have to be investigating the activity of a crime. The word collusion has been used because there is no such crime as collusion. The mainstream media and the politicians, the Democrat politicians and the Mueller team, have been very carefully using the word collusion instead of the words conspiracy to defraud, because they knew full well going into it that Trump had not committed any crime, which is similar to the thing which they refer to as collusion. Had that not been the case, had there been evidence of a crime that fits the description of this so-called collusion narrative, that crime would be a conspiracy to defraud either the U.S. government or the American people. So here's the thing. False accusation is also a crime. They have been very careful with that language so that they could have their cake and eat it too, so that they could accuse the president of what the general public would perceive to be a crime, while never actually taking on the liability of slander and libel for falsely accusing a crime in the absence of evidence. Had there been evidence at any point that such a crime had been even entertained by the president, then there would have been an FBI investigation into whether or not Donald Trump had committed the crime of conspiracy to defraud. This never occurred. Now here's where the bombshell occurs.
So what you're saying is that the bottom line is that the Democrats needed the language that they used against Trump in what they were using in a political capacity. They needed it euphemized enough so that it basically could not be considered actually legally binding, but would appear to be as such in the minds of ignorant constituents.
Yeah. So think about it. Before the whole Trump-Russia thing, before this whole narrative,
this was actually a big idea. Like, this was actually reported on about 18 months ago, like right when this started. It was understood amongst people on the right. Breitbart actually did a decent job of reporting on that. What is collusion? Is it a crime? No, it's not. It's you know what I mean. Breitbart actually reported on that. So I mean, anyone in the know has been aware of this. We're talking about the normie, the consumer of CNN.
Right. Well, and here's another problem with the language, and I actually have some complaints about the Breitbart article there. The Breitbart article did correctly point out, and several other articles around the same time did correctly point out, that the word collusion is not the name of an actual crime under U.S. law, and that it's bizarre that they use that language. But they did not go so far as to make the accusation that I'm making, that language was used for the purpose of subtly misleading the public without actually committing to the commission of the crime of falsely accusing someone else of having committed a crime.
Well, when you've got a circus tier chorus of celebrities who are willing to basically back you up and screech madness 24 hours a day for 23 months on Twitter, it makes your position a lot easier to sell. You know what I mean?
Yes. Forgive me for looking away. I'm checking to see if we got any chats going on yet. We do not.
Larry, don't go to Twitter. It's cancer.
I'm not cancer. Twitter. I'm not on Twitter. We have a dedicated chat here, shithead. And 2 people are watching the show. Hi, 2 people.
Hi, 2 people. Remember, I'm the bad guy. Larry's a good guy. Okay? Let me just put it in perspective for you. Thank you.
You can tell by our video quality. So anyway, all that said, boom, right here. The report explains that the special counsel and his staff thoroughly invested allegations that members of the presidential campaign of Donald Trump and others associated with it conspired with the Russian government in its efforts to interfere in the 2016 U.S. presidential election or sought to obstruct the related federal investigations. The special counsel and his staff thoroughly investigated allegations that members of the presidential campaign of Donald Trump and others associated conspired with the Russian government. You see what I mean? There's that word. He didn't say colluded.
Yeah.
Because the word collusion does not itself equal a crime.
It doesn't have legal precedence. Collusion is not a legal word. Conspiracy is.
Yes.
That's what you're getting at. Yeah, of course.
So what we see just in these first two paragraphs is that Mueller was brought in to investigate Russian interference in the 2016 presidential election, which is a counterintelligence investigation. And then, in what is undoubtedly a gross overreach of his authority in the scope of that investigation, the report explains that the counsel and his staff investigated the president, Donald Trump, and others associated with him.
They had to get something. You know what I mean? Like you 2 years of investigation. If you don't get someone, basically on a crime 10 years ago involved in a Slavic country somewhere, then you're going to look ridiculous. You got to do something. Manafort was a sacrifice.
That would be true if there had been enough evidence to generate an initial criminal investigation into American citizens. But that's not what happened here. They investigated Russian interference. So if they're investigating Russian interference into the election, then showing that Russians, independent of any involvement with Americans, had done something like social media manipulation, fake news, anything like that, disinformation, dissemination of disinformation, psych warfare, stuff like that. The Russians are perfectly capable of doing those things without any assistance, without any treason or conspiracy from American citizens, and that is the sort of thing that you would be investigating in the case of a probe into Russian interference. What I'm saying is that even according to Barr's letter here, Mueller, who was supposed to have been investigating Russian interference. Shut those dogs up! Damn, son.
Sorry, I got idiot dogs. So, apparently the only Russian interference that was actually confirmed was $50,000 worth of Facebook ads. So, if you want to, I think the Democratic National Committee should really take a hard look at that, because they spent $1 billion on Hillary. Apparently, all it took was $50,000 worth of normie memes targeting baby boomers. And that's how you won the election. So, you know what? I took note of it. Apparently, I can be president too. I just need to get a small personal loan.
Yeah, right. And an interesting point there. This investigation cost the taxpayers over $25 million to investigate a crime, which, if we're to believe the findings of the investigation itself, involved less than $100,000 in expenditures.
Right.
That's insane. That's absolute. If I can suck down $250 million. No, that's not $250 million. Anyway. If I can suck down $25 million in damages to a political opponent for $100,000 a pop.
Yeah.
Dude.
Yeah. Paltry sums in comparison to what
massive damage.
Yeah, of course.
The profit margin on causing the bankruptcy of a political opponent is outrageous in political capital and actual money. So that's this is the biggest takeaway that Mueller and his team drastically overreached the scope of their investigation. That this at a minimum goes under fraud, waste, and abuse, if not an outright criminal mismanagement of the office.
Well, Trump said it was a crime. Trump literally called it a crime what was done. So,
and he's absolutely right.
Yeah.
So that's the bombshell here. So it then goes on to talk about the special counsel obtained a number of indictments and convictions of individual entities in connection with the investigation, all of which have been publicly disclosed. Of course, the investigation special counsel also referred matters to other offices for further action. Okay, a bunch of process crimes and horse shit. Let me point something out. It's Manafort that had the bullshit giraffe skin suit or whatever, right?
Yeah.
They paraded around all his pretty clothes and, oh, we should indict this guy because he's rich and white. Okay. Funny thing about Manafort's crime, he was indicted over and he pled guilty and is going to spend some time in jail. But
I don't think he should.
I agree.
Clinton pardoned Mark Rich, a man who actually committed massive financial crimes against the United States and defrauded the government. Okay, Manafort, this is small fry stuff. He was moving a little bit of money for the Ukrainian government. Okay, and basically lobbying on behalf of Ukraine for their EU membership. Basically, hey, here's some money. Help us basically, grease the skids for entry into the EU. That's what Manafort did. And he did it in 2006, back when Trump was basically a TV character, way before he decided to run for office. Completely unrelated. Mark Rich, you know what? We're not going to go down that path. I'm just saying, if Mark Rich can get a pardon, Trump should pardon literally everybody. Everyone should be pardoned who was part of this, who basically came up with an indictment in this investigation. Every single one of them should be pardoned, in my opinion, just because F you.
Well, this investigation was such a farce. It caused unwarranted harm to people who didn't deserve it. And just like I was talking about earlier with Trayvon and the like, the Trayvon situation and the like, with Manafort's situation, his case, that the suspicion of him having committed a crime is something that had occurred back in 2006, and the prosecutors decided not to go forward because there was not evidence sufficient to secure a conviction. They basically said, they looked at it and they said, he may have done it, he probably did something, but we really can't prove it. The only reason it was even re-examined was to cause him harm. And I'm just going to go ahead and say it. I think what happened with Manafort is that Mueller and his team used this as a weapon. They used this previously thrown out little crime so that they could threaten him with harm to secure his cooperation, so that they could get him to testify or compose. And yes, I do mean compose, as in make shit up on the spot and lie to try and get out of getting in trouble. And apparently he didn't.
Imagine the pressure on Mueller. Imagine the pressure on him. I guarantee he knew within 4 months of the start of the special counsel that there was literally nothing here. And he had to go find something with a little bit of meat on the bone just to throw out there to the public. and to the media and to the Democrats. He had to offer them something. He had to offer them at least an hors d'oeuvre platter. It came out as an offal plate because he knew that there was no main course coming. I know the man knew early on there was nothing here, and I'm sure he felt a lot of pressure. I want to know who pressured him.
Maybe it's in the Clinton emails that were just recovered.
Warning, warning. You are about to enter a rabbit hole. There is no return.
I'm not going to go down the Clinton email rabbit hole tonight.
That requires, Larry, that requires a special counsel. You can't do it alone.
I agree. Okay, look.
Thanks, Sessions. Thanks for nothing. Thanks.
The Clinton email rabbit hole is one that we need to go down again soon. And I say that for this reason. I know that America is bored with the Clinton email situation, but the fact of the matter is this. Major crimes were committed. It's not just the Clinton email situation. It's the Uranium One, Clinton email, the obvious conspiracy that involved Comey and previous heads of the FBI, including Mueller, to exonerate Clinton despite overwhelming evidence of a serious crime. Yeah, everybody's bored of it, but here's the problem. The fact of the matter is that we have a justice system right now that does not respect the law, under which the rule of law is rapidly reaching a point of non-existence. The continuation of this Mueller probe for 2 years is evidence of that on its own.
So Larry, here's the hard question, and you know what? I'm sorry to put you on the spot, but
my rifle is loaded. It's sitting at the top of the staircase.
What can you tell? What?
My rifle is loaded. It's sitting at the top of the staircase.
I'm not going to say anything controversial.
Oh.
So my question to you is, to someone like me who's already accepted the fact that there is basically the Clintons will not be prosecuted. She will never be locked up. The crimes related to Uranium One, crimes related to Jeffrey Epstein, all of these things, all of it that goes back to the Clinton circle, Clinton Global, what was it? Clinton Global Initiative. Yeah, like it's not going to happen. You have to understand, like the bureaucracy self-polices itself. Okay, the deep state polices itself. Hillary's crime, the Clintons, their punishment for their crime was that they are no longer the leaders of the Democrat Party. They're now in exile, and they can go off and live comfortably in exile, but they're not allowed to wield political power in the two-sided uni party anymore in the United States. That was their punishment. So I know this, and I know that nothing's going to happen to them. What would you say to me to convince me that I need to be passionate about this again?
That if the Clintons are allowed to get away with a slap on the wrist like they have, the slap on the wrist that is being in political exile from the party, the problem with that is that Chelsea and her progeny may once again gain those reins of power, and that other politicians, other powerful elites of the same stripe, will continue to believe that they can conduct themselves in that way, in such a way as they can cause irreparable harm for their own profit with no risk and no real cost, at the end of which, even if they get caught, their worst case scenario is a long life of wealth and leisure. When what should happen is such corruption should be recognized and should be met with execution.
So, I agree with you completely. I'd burn them myself personally. But, I mean, Sessions didn't do anything. So, there's nothing.
No, Sessions is a coward.
Nothing's going to happen at this point. Sessions was probably compromised. They probably got evidence of him diddling someone 20 years ago, and basically that's why he couldn't do anything. I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, that seems to be normal par for course for Washington.
Yeah. All right. The rest of this memo is pretty boilerplate. Is there anything else you wanted to really go into with it?
Media reaction. Let's talk about media reaction. How do they spin
Yes.
that? You know what I mean? So what I've seen, so I want to talk about Nadler, Jerry Nadler, right? Democrat, Nevada. Okay. So this guy, honestly, this guy should get a pay raise. If there's one thing if there's one thing you have to admire about the Democrat Party, it's that they actually have a unity of message whenever there's something bad, right? Whenever something's damaging for the party, unity of message. They had Nadler out there basically doing the rounds on every single media cable outlet today, talking about, in his euphemistic fashion, how, well, if the report doesn't produce anything, there are still other avenues. Basically, if the report doesn't indict Trump, it doesn't mean that he's not guilty, so we can pursue other avenues. And then they're also dropping that. You're going to see it more and more in the media, as the week passes, how, the New York district attorney, what does he have on Trump? That's going to be the new angle. I mean, the point is, they've lost their primary vehicle to cause obstruction into a Trump presidency, obstruction of the MAGA agenda, with this basically sword of Damocles hanging over Trump's head, right? Which was
and
the special counsel.
Yeah, keep going.
So
I'm glad you mentioned obstruction.
They've lost that main vehicle, so now they're going to go to secondary vehicles. And one thing you have to give the Democrats credit for is that they have a unity of message to seamlessly transition this narrative. Okay, there's not going to be people going off the reservation saying things that are going to upset the party leadership. No, they leave that to I don't know. I haven't seen a comment from AOC yet. She might torpedo the whole thing. Pray to God. But that's what you're seeing. It's how do we transition the Mueller investigation into civil action taking place in New York, and that really is it. It's downplay and never accept responsibility for the fact that you peddled concentrated fake news to the country for 23 solid months. Rachel Maddow, Chris Matthews, they should be gone. They should be fired. It's an embarrassment. Like, you're already seeing it on
No, that's not true. They did their jobs very well. The jobs that they've done are exactly the jobs they were hired to do. I mean, the fact is that they were hired to do jobs that are morally reprehensible. They're terrible people.
Yes.
And they probably deserve to die because they're bad people. Because they seek consistently to earn profit at the wages of causing harm to America.
Right.
Essentially, they're professional peddlers of sedition. But make no mistake, they're quite good at the job for which they were hired, and the job for which they were hired is the sowing of sedition. They exist professionally to cause harm to
I was going to
Americans.
describe it in a metaphor. Basically, their job is to inject poison into the body politic, which is actually an apt description of what sedition is. So yes, I agree.
Now you mentioned obstruction. And you mentioned it in a different context, but that is the other thing that is interesting here in the report on page 3. After Barr points out that he and Rosenstein have concluded that there's no evidence sufficient to establish that the president committed an obstruction of justice offense, the reasoning behind it is very interesting, and I think ultimately is correct. That the evidence does not establish that the president was involved in an underlying crime related to Russian election interference, and that while not determinative, the absence of such evidence bears upon the president's intent with respect to obstruction. Basically, what he's saying here is that even if there had been evidence of obstruction of justice committed by the president, um, and without bothering to take the time to consider the constitutional concerns around the question of indictment of and criminal prosecution of a sitting president, the fact of the matter is that without proving that he committed a crime, it is impossible to establish that he had motive to engage in obstruction of justice as a distinct and separate crime.
Yeah.
So basically, he's saying that in order to even consider whether any individual actions taken by the president establish or rise to the bar of establishing obstruction of justice, first it's necessary to prove that he committed the crime of which he's suspected of obstructing.
There can't be obstruction because there wasn't the motive in the first place. Correct.
Right.
Yes.
There's nothing to obstruct.
Correct. Yeah. I mean, and that's what it is. I mean, so what you saw, the big hits, the greatest hits of the Mueller investigation were process crimes, right? And you look at Jerry Nadler, you know what? If there was one buzzword that I would love every American to get really familiar with right now, is the concept of a process crime. I guarantee most people out there don't know what it means. It means crimes that happen that are accessory crimes resulting in the course of an investigation. Basically, you were interviewed on one day, and then 3 months later you got interviewed about the exact same topic, and your grammar and syntax was different, and therefore you committed perjury. Like, this is the Democrats' angle. What they want is to create crimes as a matter of fact through a process, simply for the purpose of manufacturing crime, not for actually revealing any sort of truth. That's what Nadler wants to do with the House, and that is, I think, what they're going to try to do in concert with the District Attorney of New York.
Yeah,
is Bahara still in power, or is he gone? Like, Trump fired him, right?
I think so. I'm not sure. I don't know. I don't know.
I still see him on the news. Apparently, he's an important person or something. I don't know.
But yeah, with the process crimes, to be very clear about that, process crimes include things like the perjury trap, where you go after a process crime. The only reason that a prosecutor or an investigator is ever going to go after a process crime is because they fucked up. They tried to prove that there was a crime. They couldn't prove it, and they want to hurt the guy anyway.
Right.
Process crimes only have one victim, the accused.
Yeah. It's basically they went after you for capital murder and they couldn't get it, so then they went for your taxes. But then they couldn't get you on taxes because you had a good accountant. So they got you on process crimes. Like, it's literally tier 3, bottom of the barrel convictions. You know what I mean? You go after someone for something like that, it's got to be personal, because literally anyone investigated long enough with enough interviews and subpoenas is going to be put in jail if you really wanted to do it. Like, who was the guy? The first guy who was the director of the KGB, I forgot his name, but he gave a really amazing quote. He goes, basically, give me the man and I will find you the crime. Anyone can be convicted if you put enough resources to it. No one could be innocent.
And let me take it a step further. When you're talking about a process crime, any process crime, what's going on here is the prosecutor or the investigator set out with the intent to cause you harm, and they wanted to do it by convicting you of a serious crime. Once you're down to process crime, the fact of the matter is that you are being convicted, you're being indicted rather, and eventually perhaps convicted. When you're talking about a process crime, you're being indicted on a crime that not only would you not have committed without the investigation into the crime that you didn't commit, you would not have been able to it would have been impossible for you to have committed the process crime without you having been falsely accused of another crime which you didn't commit.
Like when you would explain it in a simple fashion, it's so silly. Like, I think the original intent of the process crimes was basically this guy's really a bad guy, and we've got him on something, and we really want to tack a few more years on his sentence to keep him away from the public. So let's go for some bonus points. That's
And see, I'm okay with process crimes.
That's what
I'd be okay with
is.
process crimes as bonus points, but if I had my way, you couldn't even consider the question of whether or not somebody had committed a process crime unless you could at least prove that there was sufficient evidence to investigate an actual fucking crime.
I laugh because it's scary.
It is. It's terrifying. It's the drumhead. It's the drumhead trial. It's the fucking. It's you're standing all your privates up and you say we're all going to do push-ups until somebody admits they ate my candy bar.
Yep.
And everybody says yes, drill sergeant. But drill sergeant ate the fucking candy bar, and he knows that. But somebody's going to admit it for the good of the group. And that's somebody is not going to be Mario.
That's an excellent analogy. I have been subjected to such a judicial process.
Yeah, I know. I remember.
They broke me.
So
all right. So
10 minutes left.
Any last key points you want to hit on?
Nope. We've only got 10 minutes left. I want to go ahead and tell a story.
Story time.
Because yesterday was one of my favorite drill sergeant's birthdays, and he and I are friends on Facebook. Mario, you remember Sunnydale?
I knew you were going to say Sunny. Yeah.
One of my favorite memories of Drill Sergeant Hyde. Apart from the time that we were talking about the video of the combatives, where we had been practicing our hand-to-hand fighting, and I looked at him and I said, "You know, Drill Sergeant, it's kind of like porno. It's the faces, man. It's the faces." And he said, "Get the freak out of my office," because Drill Sergeant Hyde would never use the fuck word. Never.
But he knew it was true.
Yeah, I got a laugh out of him yesterday on that one. He's my friend on Facebook. So one day, a long time ago, Drill Sergeant Hyde walked onto the Bravo Company barracks floor, where Mario and I lived at the time. And he walked onto the floor to find me in just a towel, chasing Mario out of the bathroom. Mario had been in the shower for too long, and it was my turn. And so I assaulted him with a plastic belt, and I chased him naked out of the shower to his room to free up the shower for my use. Drill Sergeant Hyde walked onto the floor at the moment that Mario came running out of the bathroom with me chasing behind him, and I saw him avert his eyes and walk away.
but you missed the breaking point. What broke you was I took your time and left you with barely 3 minutes to take a shower.
Yes.
But the final indignity was as I stepped out of the shower.
He farted.
I greased you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you know what? Like any man, you had a breaking point, and I don't blame you. You were right.
I was. It was morning. We had just done PT outside. We were hungry. And Mario was cutting into my food time. My food time. One more quick story, and then we're going to call it a night. I think I dropped this one in the text. I don't know if you saw it yesterday, Mario. I was talking to a buddy of mine the other day, and he was telling me that he saw the doc recently, and he got up on the scale, and the doc said, and he's just hating it. He said, "Man, I broke 300 pounds. I'm at 312.
Yeah.
I said, I feel you, brother. I'm just over 350 myself. And he said, yeah, but it doesn't look so bad on you. I'm only 6'4". And, and I had a moment. I was like, wow, that is some perspective right there.
I know the audience can't really tell because we're on camera, but you know, at my height, if I had Larry's weight, I'd be in a wheelbarrow. I would be unable to wash myself.
At my height, if I had Mario's weight, I would literally look anorexic.
Yep, this is correct.
I mean, at 250 pounds, I look like a swimsuit model.
I remember you at 250. I do. You got photos in the house.
Yep. Yeah,
You look like you
I
actually
got photos of the house at 250. I look like Clark Gable.
Larry at 250 pounds, he looked like Gomer Pyle with plus 40 IQ points. He looked.
I'm not sure how I feel about
that. Wasn't a bad look.
No, you look good on me. All right. That's the show tonight. See you next week.
Indeed. I love you, America. Stay strong.
Oh.
Larry, you got to feed people a fish or something. Come on, go ahead.
And MAGA, baby. MAGA. Because remember, if you give a man a fish, you'll feed him for the evening. But if you teach a man to fish, you'll lose a repeat customer. Good night.